Chevy Camaro Z28 versus the Mustang Boss 302. The ultimate Trans Am battle. Two engines, both legends, both built for one purpose: to destroy each other on America's road courses every single weekend. This wasn't just about selling cars, this was about corporate pride, racing supremacy, and proving which company truly understood what performance meant. You heard the stories from guys who were there. The screaming battles at Riverside, Laguna Seca, and Road America. Chevrolet's Camaro Z28 dominated the early years. Then Ford fired back with the Boss 302, a machine that changed everything. Every weekend was war, and every race was a battle for the soul of American motorsports. Tonight, we are settling one of the greatest rivalries in muscle car history: the Camaro Z28 versus the Mustang Boss 302. Precision engineering versus raw racing intent, Chevy engineering versus Ford fury. But here is what will blow your mind. One of these cars was so advanced that its engine architecture still influences NASCAR today. And wait until you hear about the secret test sessions, where these two met head-to-head, with nobody watching except the engineers who built them. So fire up some credence, grab your favorite cold one, and let's dive into the racing war that gave us two of the greatest American muscle cars ever built. This isn't just about horsepower. This is about what happens when corporate giants go to war. The stage was Trans Am racing. Picture this. 1967. Trans Am racing was the hottest thing in American motorsports. Manufacturers had to build real street cars to go racing, and suddenly every gearhead in America could buy a legitimate race car with license plates. The rules were simple, but brutal. Under 305 cubic inches, production-based, and ready to run wheel-to-wheel at 150 miles per hour on tracks that would make today's safety inspectors faint. This wasn't for the faint of heart. This was automotive gladiator combat. Chevrolet jumped in first with the Camaro Z28, a car so focused on winning races that comfort was basically an afterthought. They took the best parts from their racing program and stuffed them into a street car that looked civilized but drove like a caged animal. Ford watched Chevrolet dominate the early Trans Am seasons and got mad. Really mad. And when Ford gets mad, they don't just build a competitor, they build a weapon. Enter the Boss 302. Named after the racing series it was designed to conquer. These weren't just muscle cars anymore. They were corporate statements wrapped in steel and rubber, carrying the pride of two companies that refused to accept second place. The contenders. Meet your warriors. In the Chevrolet corner, the 1969 Camaro Z28. This wasn't your typical big block muscle car. While everyone else was stuffing massive engines into heavy bodies, Chevrolet went in a completely different direction. They built a small block that could rev to the moon, then wrapped it in a package that could actually turn corners. That 302 cubic inch V8 was a masterpiece of controlled engineering violence. A solid lifter cam, forged internals, and an appetite for high-octane fuel that would make your wallet cry. But when you hit 6,000 RPM, it transformed into something that sounded like mechanical thunder mixed with pure racing fury. The Camaro Z28 package meant your Camaro could go from a grocery store parking lot to the racetrack without missing a beat. Those racing stripes were not decoration. They were warnings. This was a street car that happened to be a race car, or maybe it was the other way around. Now, in the Ford corner, the 1969 Mustang Boss 302. If the Camaro Z28 was Chevrolet's precision instrument, the Boss 302 was Ford's declaration of war. Ford took everything they had learned from getting beaten by Chevrolet and built a Mustang specifically designed for revenge. That Boss 302 engine was not just powerful, it was angry. Ford's racing engineers massaged every component until it could produce race-winning power while still starting every morning and driving to work. The result was an engine that pulled hard from idle and kept pulling until your courage ran out. The Boss 302 attracted drivers who wanted everyone to know they had chosen the weapon specifically designed to beat Chevrolet. This wasn't just transportation. This was automotive patriotism wrapped in Ford racing fury. But the real battle was not happening in showrooms. It was happening every weekend, on racetracks, where legends were born. This was racing reality, where champions were made. Trans Am racing was brutal. These cars would run flat out for hours, fighting for every tenth of a second on tracks that demanded everything from both driver and machine. This wasn't drag racing, where you could hide problems behind straight-line speed. This was road racing, where every weakness was exposed. The early Camaro Z28s dominated because Chevrolet understood something Ford was still learning. Road racing was about the total package: power, handling, braking, and reliability. Everything had to work together perfectly, or you would watch your competitors disappear into the distance. Mark Donohue in the Camaro Z28 was virtually unbeatable in 1968 and early 1969. That Camaro would stick to the track like it was glued down, and when Donohue hit the throttle coming out of corners, that 302 cubic inch small block pulled like a freight train with racing ambitions. But Ford was learning. Every race where they were beaten taught them something new about what it took to win. When the Boss 302 finally showed up at the tracks, it carried lessons learned from every defeat and the fury of a company that was tired of finishing second. Parnelli Jones and George Fulmer and the Boss 302 Mustangs were not just racing. They were on a mission to prove that Ford could build anything Chevrolet could build, only better. Those Mustangs would dive into corners where other cars would push straight into the weeds. The racing battles were so intense that drivers from both camps developed a mutual respect that bordered on something almost religious. They knew they were pushing machines that represented the absolute best each company could build. This was the street truth, the real-world showdown. But what really mattered to guys like us was how these racing weapons performed when the lights turned green on a Friday night. Strip away the racing glory and the marketing hype, and only one question remained. Which car would make you king of your local scene? The Camaro Z28 was the thinking man's muscle car. That 302 cubic inch small block did not hit you with massive torque like a big block, but it rewarded skill, timing, and courage. Learn to keep it on the cam, and you would embarrass cars with twice the displacement. Everything about the Camaro Z28 felt connected. The steering, the brakes, the suspension. When you drove it hard, you understood exactly why Mark Donohue could make it dance around road courses. This was a total performance package that just happened to have license plates. The Z28 attracted drivers who understood that real performance came from harmony between every system working together. You could not just mash the gas and hope for the best. You had to earn every bit of speed this car was willing to give you. The Boss 302 had different priorities. Where the Z28 was sophisticated, the Boss was direct. That engine delivered power in a way that felt more immediate and more urgent. When you stood on the throttle, things happened right now. Ford built the Boss 302 for drivers who wanted their performance delivered with attitude. Those functional hood scoops were not just for show, and when that engine opened up, everyone within 3 blocks knew something special was happening. The Boss 302 was the car for drivers who wanted to make a statement. For drivers who chose the weapon specifically designed to beat Chevrolet, every acceleration was a declaration that you had joined Ford's war against the Bowtie Army. Coming up next is the head-to-head battle that settled this debate once and for all. The ultimate test when legends collided. The summer of 1969, Riverside Raceway. After the official Trans Am race was over and the crowds had gone home, something happened that most people never heard about. A Camaro Z28 and a Mustang Boss 302, both prepped by their factory teams, lined up for a private test session that would determine which car truly had the edge. No spectators. No prize money. Just 2 teams of engineers with something to prove, and 2 drivers who lived for moments like this. This was the kind of test where you discovered which car could truly deliver when everything was on the line. The Camaro Z28 got the whole shot, that small block screaming toward the first turn like it was trying to tear itself apart. But the Boss 302 was right there, hanging on through the S-turns, waiting for an opportunity to prove that Ford engineering was superior. Through the technical sections, both cars were so evenly matched that the drivers had to dig deeper than they ever had before. This wasn't about the cars anymore. This was about which machine could give its driver that extra tenth of a second needed for victory. Down the back straight, the Boss 302 pulled alongside. Those Ford engineers had built something capable of matching Chevrolet's best effort, and everyone watching knew they were seeing history being written in tire smoke and racing fuel. At the checkered flag, the margin was less than a car length. But what mattered wasn't who crossed the line first. What mattered was that both cars had proven they belonged in a category all by themselves. Now comes the technical truth. What really made them special? Let's talk about what separated these engines from everything else Detroit was building at the time. Both companies threw their best engineering talent at creating 302 cubic inch masterpieces, but they took completely different approaches. The Chevrolet 302 was built like a full race engine that just happened to be street legal, with a forged steel crank, a solid lifter cam, and cylinder heads that flowed air as if they were designed in a wind tunnel. When you revved it past 6,000 RPM, it kept pulling like it was just getting started. Chevrolet had learned from its small block racing program that displacement was not everything. Build an engine that could rev freely and breathe efficiently, and you could embarrass big blocks that relied on brute force alone. The Ford Boss 302 took a different path. Ford started with their Windsor small block and gave it the full racing treatment, but with an emphasis on delivering power across a broader RPM range. Those massive Cleveland cylinder heads moved serious air, and the result was an engine that pulled hard everywhere. Ford's philosophy was to build an engine that delivered race-winning performance without requiring a doctorate in engine tuning. Point it in a direction, stand on the throttle, and let Ford engineering do the rest. Both engines shared one critical advantage. They were light enough to let their cars handle like proper sports cars, instead of straight-line missiles. That was the secret that separated them from every other muscle car on the street. The impact that never ended. Here is something that will blow your mind. The technology developed for these Trans Am warriors is still winning races today. NASCAR teams still study the cylinder head designs. Drag racers copy the bottom-end combinations, and road racers continue trying to recreate the suspension setups. The Camaro Z28 proved that Chevrolet could build small-block engines that would rev to the moon without self-destructing. Every LS engine powering today's Camaros and Corvettes traces its DNA back to those original Trans Am 302 engines. The Boss 302 showed Ford how to build engines that delivered massive power without sacrificing reliability. When Ford needed to create the Coyote engines for modern Mustangs, they went back and studied what made the Boss 302 so special. But the real legacy was not technical. It was emotional. These cars taught an entire generation that American manufacturers could build sophisticated performance machines that did not have to choose between power and handling. Every kid who saw a Camaro Z28 or a Boss 302 on the street learned that muscle cars could be precision instruments, not just powerful bruisers. They expanded what it meant to be a performance car in America. The verdict. Which warrior won? After all the racing, testing, and street battles, which car truly deserved the crown? The honest truth is that both the Camaro Z28 and the Boss 302 achieved something far more important than outright victory. They achieved automotive immortality. The Camaro Z28 was the more sophisticated machine, a car that rewarded skill and delivered performance through precision engineering. It attracted drivers who understood that real speed came from harmony between every system working together. The Boss 302 was the more direct weapon, a car that delivered its performance with attitude and made sure everyone knew you had chosen the Ford specifically built to beat Chevrolet. It was built for drivers who wanted their rebellion served with a side of racing pedigree. In the end, the real victory may have been that both companies pushed each other to create machines that were better than either could have built alone. The Camaro Z28 forced Ford to build the Boss 302, and the Boss 302 forced Chevrolet to perfect the Camaro Z28. These were not just cars, they were proof that when American manufacturers truly tried, they could build anything the world could throw at them. They were rolling demonstrations that performance, handling, and style did not have to be mutually exclusive. The Camaro Z28 versus the Boss 302, two approaches to the same goal, two philosophies about what performance should mean, and two cars that proved American engineering could create sophistication without sacrificing soul. Whether you are Team Chevrolet or Team Ford, you have to respect what both companies achieved during the Trans Am wars. They gave us cars that could win races on Sunday and drive to work on Monday, machines that expanded what we thought was possible from Detroit iron. Which side of this battle captures your heart? Are you a Z28 precision believer? Or does the Boss 302 direct assault approach speak to your soul? Let us know in the comments. And do not be surprised if this starts some serious debates. If this racing rivalry brought back some high-octane memories, subscribe to American Muscle Soul and ride with us every day into the heart of classic American performance. And now it is your turn to decide which philosophy wins your loyalty, Camaro Z28 precision or Boss 302 aggression. Drop your side in the comments and let the debate ignite.